Modern research shows this kind of mental contrasting, imagining life without positive things, actually creates much stronger gratitude than just counting blessings. So, like, imagining my life without my wife is very powerful and forces me to really appreciate what she adds to my life.
So even if I was annoying right before this episode recording, now you appreciate me?
Let me think about that.
You're on the record.
I'm just waiting.
This is on the record.
I'm just imagining this podcast without you.
It would be so boring.
Welcome to MD Longevity Lab, where we're playing the long game. This is a podcast where science meets real life with expert insights, practical tips, and real-world tools to not only live longer, but live better. Our aim is to radically change the way medicine is practiced and enable individuals to age gracefully, maintaining healthspan and vitality well into their later years. We're your hosts, Dr. Nisha and Dr. Vikas Patel, physicians, partners in life, and parents balancing work, wellness, and everything in between. Let's dive in. Welcome to the MD Longevity Lab podcast, where we are playing the long game. I'm Dr. Vikas, and I'm here with my brilliant co-host and wife, Dr. Nisha. This episode is airing on Thanksgiving, so we really want to discuss a topic that feels especially appropriate for today.
That's right. We're talking about the longevity superpowers of human connection and gratitude. And before you guys roll your eyes thinking this is just feel-good, mushy fluff, we've got some fascinating data that might make you rethink your social calendar and your daily mindset.
And honestly, it couldn't be a better topic for our Thanksgiving. We've got a full day ahead, our annual early morning turkey trot with the kids, then the traditional family football game that Nisha's family has been doing for 20 years now?
Yep. 20 years of highly questionable athleticism, to say the least. What started as my siblings and I tackling each other in the yard is now a multi-generational event with our siblings, obviously spouses, kids, in-laws, and now pulled hamstrings, and at least one person icing their lower back by halftime. But we love it. It's movement, it's chaos, connection, competition, and the perfect reminder that longevity isn't about metrics, it's about moments.
Exactly. And yes, we're active and intentional, but let's be clear. I'm absolutely having pie after football, probably twice. And Nisha already has her Thanksgiving cocktail menu locked in.
You betcha. Listen, gratitude practice includes being thankful for cocktails and dessert, and that's called balance.
That's right. Speaking of balance, I was reviewing a patient's comprehensive longevity assessment yesterday, and this gentleman had perfect VO2 max, excellent DEXA, all of his biomarkers are in range, but they were on their second antidepressant, hadn't seen their best friend in the last 6 months, and couldn't remember the last time they genuinely felt grateful beyond anything other than their morning coffee.
And that's like having $1 million in your health bank account, but forgetting how compound interest works. So today we're going to explore why humans evolved to be social creatures and how isolation literally rewires the brain, and why gratitude might be as effective as some antidepressants, believe it or not, without the side effects.
All right, so let's get into the evolution of our social brain. Let's start with a mind-blowing fact. Your brain is wired for connection. Not like metaphorically, I mean literally. And there's an evolutionary story here that's absolutely fascinating.
Robin Dunbar, an anthropologist, discovered that the size of a primate's neocortex, which is the outermost part of the brain, directly correlates with the size of their social group. The bigger the group, the bigger the brain. Humans have the largest neocortex relative to body size of any primate. And why is that? It's because we have evolved to manage complex social networks.
Think about it. Our ancestors didn't just evolve opposable thumbs and the ability to walk upright. About 2 million years ago, something revolutionary happened. Instead of eating where they found food, like other primates, early humans started bringing food back to a central place to share. This is huge. It allowed for a division of labor, caring for sick and elderly, and created the foundation for storytelling and culture. There's this interdependence hypothesis, and it suggests that at some point, humans created lifestyles where collaborating with others wasn't really optional anymore. There was actually a necessary survival benefit to it. If you couldn't cooperate, you literally couldn't survive. This created an intense evolutionary pressure for social skills, for empathy, and the ability to maintain these social relationships.
There was another important neuroscience research study that showed something remarkable too. When we're not actively engaged in a task, our brain's default mode is social. Within milliseconds of finishing any non social activity, our social brain gets turned on like a reflex. Evolution has literally bet that the best thing for our brain to do in any spare moment is to prepare for social interaction. And unfortunately, this is where the smartphone and social media has entered the fray, right?
Yeah, so when patients tell me they're fine being alone or they don't really need people, I remind them that they're fighting against 2 million years of evolution. Your brain is as designed for social connection as your lungs are designed for oxygen. And unfortunately, social media has filled in as a substitute for real social connection. It just isn't the same thing. Our brain craves it, but since it is easy and available anytime and any place, it's replacing what we really should be doing, which is spending time with people.
Yeah. Let's talk about what happens when we don't get that real social oxygen. The US Surgeon General even declared that loneliness is a public health epidemic, and the mental health implications of loneliness are staggering.
They're pretty sobering. Social isolation increases your mortality risk by at least 50%. Some studies show that among the most socially isolated, the odds of mortality increase by over 90%.
There was a meta analysis that showed that loneliness increases depression risk by 77%, but depression also causes people to withdraw socially, creating even more isolation. So it's whether it's a chicken or the egg problem.
Exactly. From a neurobiological perspective, chronic loneliness triggers the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is our body's stress response system. You get sustained elevation of cortisol, decreased serotonin turnover, and altered dopamine receptor sensitivity.
And here's something that might surprise people: loneliness is an evolutionary alarm signal, just like hunger or thirst. It's your brain's way of saying, warning, your survival is at risk. Seek connection immediately. But in our modern digital world, we often ignore the signal or try to suppress it with our smartphones, social media, our laptops, which is like trying to satisfy hunger with pictures of food.
Yeah, the research on social isolation during COVID really drove a lot of this home. We saw a 34% increase in anxiety. We saw a 26% increase in depression and a 27% increase in PTSD or post traumatic stress symptoms. And these weren't just in people who had pre existing mental health conditions, these were population wide effects. The good news is, though, that the relationship works both ways, right? So studies show that improving social connection can be as effective as antidepressants for mild to moderate symptoms of depression. One study found that cognitive behavioral therapy combined with social connection interventions reduced depression scores by 40% more than just CBT alone.
All right, let's move into our third segment, which is gratitude, a perfect topic for Thanksgiving, because this is where things really get exciting from a clinical perspective. We have the first ever mortality study on gratitude.
Yeah, so the Harvard Nurses Health Study followed nearly 50,000 women and found that in the highest third of gratitude scores, they had a 9% lower risk of dying over the next 4 years. But here's what's fascinating: the effect was strongest for cardiovascular deaths, with a 15% reduction in cardiovascular deaths.
A meta analysis found that gratitude interventions significantly reduced symptoms of anxiety and depression. And what's remarkable is that these effects were not immediate. They built up over time, unlike many interventions where benefits decrease. I know we tell our kids all the time, be grateful, and we yell at them.
I think that's the right approach.
Yeah, well, it'll build over time.
It builds over time. One study that really stood out involved 300 adults. They were split into three groups. One that wrote gratitude letters weekly, one that wrote about negative experiences, and one that just received counseling. The gratitude groups showed significantly better mental health at 4 weeks and even more improvement at 12 weeks.
And this is crucial because it shows gratitude works even for people with clinical depression. And unlike antidepressants, which often have side effects like weight gain, sexual dysfunction, or emotional blunting, some people feel like they've kind of got a veil over their emotions and don't like that feeling. Gratitude has only positive side effects, right? Better sleep, improved relationships, enhanced immune function. There's not really any downside to gratitude.
And I think a lot of people notice that their antidepressant meds lose effectiveness over time. While here's a practice that actually builds over time and actually has a stronger positive effect as time goes on. So, here's my take as a clinician. I don't think gratitude is meant to just replace therapy or replace medication. It's meant to be part of a comprehensive approach. Think of it like exercise. We don't say exercise doesn't work for heart disease just because it can't replace a stent when you need one. It's complementary.
What's particularly interesting is research shows that gratitude helps with acceptance of illness. And I know this kind of hit home for me personally when I was diagnosed with cancer 10 years ago. For women at risk for depression, gratitude was associated with better acceptance of their condition, which in turn improved mental health outcomes. It's not about toxic positivity. And I'll be the first to admit that when I got diagnosed, I went through all the stages of grief. And once I came to that acceptance phase, that's when I realized that gratitude had to be a part of my daily journey as part of my survival and livelihood.
It made you more intentional.
Yeah.
How you wanted to spend your time.
Oh, yeah. Because all of a sudden, when you're given this diagnosis at a young age that you did not expect, when you're in your young 30s, you think you're invincible, right? A cancer diagnosis is not on the radar. It really shakes your foundation on what you thought your life was going to look like. But once I got past that grieving stage and got to that point where I'm grateful for every single day that I have, and every single day means that much more. So this definitely improves health outcomes. And like I said, it's not about that toxic positivity. It's about acknowledging reality while finding genuine points of appreciation in your life.
Couldn't agree more. I think it's probably important to touch a little bit on the actual biology of connection and mood. So let's get into some of those mechanisms. How exactly do social connections and gratitude affect our biology in ways that impact both our mental health and our longevity?
So when we feel connected, our bodies shift from threat detection to what researchers call tend and befriend mode. It's that vagus nerve that gets activated. So heart rate variability improves, and we see decreased cortisol levels, which is that stress hormone, and increased oxytocin, which is that connection hormone.
Exactly. You're describing activation of the parasympathetic system. That is a system that calms us down. It reduces all of the adrenaline surge, it reduces all of the stress markers in our body. And in general, when we're at rest, we should have that parasympathetic drive. And this connection and gratitude, it helps us to shift from the sympathetic to that parasympathetic drive. So chronic loneliness really keeps us stuck in that sympathetic overdrive. It makes our body think that we're constantly under threat because, from an evolutionary standpoint, being alone meant that you were vulnerable, right? There's nobody else helping you, so you are vulnerable. This chronic stress response leads to inflammation, and we can measure that in elevated levels of IL 6, C reactive protein, TNF alpha.
Yep. And here's where it connects to the four horsemen of chronic disease. Peter Attia, the longevity guru, describes the four horsemen of chronic disease, which 95% of us are going to succumb to, right? So that's cardiovascular disease, metabolic dysfunction and diabetes, cognitive decline, things like Alzheimer's and cancer. So depression increases heart disease risk by 64%, stroke by 42%, and diabetes by 60%. But social connection and gratitude work on these same pathways in the exact opposite direction.
The neurotransmitter story is fascinating. So social isolation causes long-lasting reductions in serotonin turnover and alterations in dopamine receptor sensitivity. These are the same systems that are targeted by the common drugs that we use for mood disorder, right? SSRIs and tricyclic antidepressants. Social connection naturally modulates these systems without any pharmacological intervention.
Yep. And gratitude appears to work through different but complementary mechanisms. Gratitude increases dopamine and serotonin production in the brain's reward centers.
And both social connection and gratitude affect the default mode network in our brain. So the brain's network that ends up often dysregulated in depression is this thing that we call the default mode network. People with depression show increased activity within this network associated with rumination, with negative self focus and self doubt. Both gratitude practices and positive social interactions end up normalizing the default mode network.
Let's move into what we refer to as a Stoic connection and mental resilience. So, the Stoic philosophers understood something about mental health that we're just rediscovering. Marcus Aurelius, who arguably dealt with immense stress as the Roman emperor during plague and war, wrote extensively about both gratitude and social connection.
His famous quote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee," recognizes that we're fundamentally interdependent. But he also dealt with what we now call depression. He wrote about getting out of bed in the morning. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being, meaning as part of the collective, as part of the hive.
Yeah, the Stoic practice what we now call cognitive reframing. It's a core component of CBT. They emphasize this dichotomy of control, focusing on what you can control and accepting what you can't. And this is remarkably similar to modern acceptance and commitment therapy.
Yeah, the philosopher Seneca wrote about premeditatio malorum, which is imagining loss to appreciate what you have. This is essentially a gratitude practice, but with intensity and intention. Modern research shows this kind of mental contrasting, imagining life without positive things, actually creates much stronger gratitude than just counting blessings. So, like imagining my life without my wife is very powerful and forces me to really appreciate what she adds to my life.
So even if I was annoying right before this episode recording, now you appreciate me?
Let me think about that.
You're on the record.
I'm just waiting.
This is on the record.
I'm just imagining this podcast without you.
It would be so boring.
Okay, yes. I have much more gratitude now.
No, but on that same concept. So when I tell our kids we're eating dinner and they don't finish their plates, there's starving kids in India that would kill for this meal, or they complain about their math tutoring is a requirement of being Indian. When they complain about that, I tell them there's kids all over the world that would kill to go to school. I'm right.
You're right. We actually have to make them imagine it.
I'll be like, Seneca wrote about this premeditatio malorum that you guys should
That's right.
fully comprehend. No, what's powerful is that the Stoics saw both solitude and society as necessary. They weren't just advocating for constant socialization, but rather meaningful connection balanced with reflection. So this aligns with research showing that quality of relationships matters more than quantity for mental health. I know as we get older, right, we don't really care about those giant groups or the parties. We want a few meaningful relationships with others.
This gets into personality types, and there are some people who thrive more on a larger social network, but what matters the most is how much we are able to share of ourselves and take on other people's thoughts and feelings as well. And it's very difficult to do that in very, very large groups. Much easier to do that in smaller settings. Uh, there's another Greek philosopher who had been born a slave and had been dealt a physical disability. His musings and writings, he'd mentioned that wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This philosophy of gratitude wasn't just like naive optimism. It was literally a survival strategy for dealing with genuine hardship, much like we see gratitude helping people cope today. I think I want to transition here to this kind of die with zero philosophy and its connection to mental health. There's this book that we oftentimes recommend to a lot of our patients, Die with Zero, written by Bill Perkins. There's this interesting mental health angle here. The book talks about memory dividends, and that's the ongoing value from past experiences. So people often have impaired positive memory recall. They literally can't access their memory dividends. They're very good at remembering the negative things, but they often are not able to access the positive memories. And I think this is kind of where it gets interesting. Creating new shared experiences can create large future memory dividends. So a walk with a friend might not feel meaningful at the time, but it becomes the touchstone for recovery. And it requires us to be intentional to talk to ourselves about the fact that, oh, this was something that helped me. The day that you go on that walk before going to bed, reflect on this was a good day.
Yeah, Bill Perkins' book really resonated with me. He also talks about not delaying meaningful experiences. And I know we're always on this hamster wheel, right? Work, work, work. We've got to provide for our family. And sometimes we forget to stop and smell the roses. I think everyone should pick up that book. The takeaway is don't delay, right? When we're in our young 20s, we have our health, we have time, and we have no money. When we're old, we have money and we have time, but we've most of the time lost our health. And hopefully that won't be us. But in the middle of our life where we're at, we've still got our health. And yes, time may be the rate limiting step, but we really have to savor those moments and enjoy. So that was my takeaway from the book.
The key insight is that experiences shared with others provide the highest return on investment for both mental health and for life satisfaction. Investing in relationships during good times creates resilience for bad times.
So when I spend all our money on vacations, this is good for us.
Yeah, experiences are good.
Bill Perkins said so.
Yes, you should write him a note of gratitude.
I actually should. That'd be good.
I think you did. And he responded, didn't he?
I think so. I think it was like his PR team, but still,
It might have been.
that counts. It's like the time, well, this is before we met. We went to LA Galaxy game when David Beckham was playing, and everyone was yelling Beckham, Beckham, Beckham. And I yelled David. And David Beckham looked at me and I waved and he waved back. David Beckham knows I exist. It's that connection. Is that a valid connection?
It's a connection. And now you have that shared experience with him. It's paying you back in dividends and him.
I know it's paying him in dividends for sure.
Yeah, he's still thinking about it.
Me too.
All right. So I think we should close out here with, playing the long game and putting this into perspective.
Yeah, let's bring this home. If you're playing the long game with your health, you cannot separate physical health from mental health. And both are fundamentally tied to social connection and gratitude.
We evolved as social creatures. Our brains are literally wired for connection. Fighting against this wiring through isolation or ignoring our capacity for gratitude isn't just bad for longevity, it's a major risk factor for depression, anxiety, and as we found out earlier, for all-cause mortality.
The beautiful thing is, unlike many medical interventions, these are accessible to everyone. They're free. You don't need a prescription for gratitude. You don't need insurance approval or prior authorization for social connection.
Your homework this week has 3 parts. First, reach out to one person you haven't spoken to in a while, even if it's just a text. Second, write down one thing that you are grateful for, focusing on why you're grateful. And third, if you're struggling with depression or anxiety, know that these practices aren't instead of professional help. They're just part of this comprehensive plan of care.
Remember, 2 million years of evolution, modern neuroscience, and thousands of research studies all say the same thing. Connection and gratitude aren't just nice to have things, they're biological necessities.
As Marcus Aurelius wrote while likely dealing with his own dark moments, very little is needed to make life happy. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. But I'd add, it's also in your connections with others.
Thanks for joining us on Thanksgiving. Wish us luck on our turkey trot alongside our kids and extended family, which, let's be honest, it's really just a coordinated attempt to justify the amount of stuffing and mashed potatoes I plan to inhale later. And then we'll be forging even more social connection with our not at all competitive family turkey bowl. Someone will definitely pull a hamstring. And I know I'm not going to name any names, but someone's going to argue about a bad ref call that doesn't exist. No, listen, if we had VAR, this would be totally different.
I can set that up.
Perfect. But it's tradition and we love it.
Absolutely. And after we pretend we're still in our athletic prime, I mean, I am in my athletic prime, but after you pretend, we'll clean up just enough to break bread with our loved ones. Until next time, thanks for playing the long game with us. We sincerely hope that you're able to spend some time today with the people you love, or at least people you can tolerate until dessert, and that you feel truly grateful for the connections that add meaning to your life.
And we are grateful for you all for listening. Thank you.
Thank you for playing the long game with MD Longevity Lab. You can visit us at www.mdlongevitylab.com to learn more about how we can support you on your journey. Stay connected with us on social media at MD Longevity Lab for tips, updates, and behind-the-scenes insights. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you subscribed, left us a rating, or shared it with someone you know who's also playing the long game. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.